On our morning show today, important community conversation. We're going to focus on Richland County, and we have County Board Chair Dave Turk here. We also have Tricia Clements, Richland County Administrator, and Steve Williams is here as well, a County Board member, longtime member, and good to talk about some things going on. It's not for a lack of things to talk about today, Trish.
That's exactly right. There's lots going on at the county level right now.
You were just here last week, I believe, with the Simons group, and since then you've had a meeting.
Yes. So we had a meeting on Monday night. Executive and Finance met, and we did talk about Simons. What was happening previously was that we had a study done, and they gave us 5 options. One of the options was to have the school district take over, and there was the possibility of taking advantage of an innovation grant from the state. So we were trying to rush things real quick in case if we couldn't make it work. We couldn't make it work, so now we're just taking a step back. We're slowing down, and we are going to regroup with the city and talk about, okay, what should our next steps be?
So the innovation grant, that time has expired for that then?
Yes, it expired on March 31st. There is a possibility of future grant opportunities, but for now we're really just looking at what is the best way that we can make Simon sustainable.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about that later on in the program as well. We had some questions about the ambulance service, yes. And I know that there have been some proposals, some options. Could you maybe make those a little bit clearer and talk about those for us?
Absolutely. So the county back in late December, early January, engaged with Strategic Management and Consulting to complete a study. The purpose of the study was to look at what is best for the county related to ambulance service, primarily looking at the area served by the Richland ambulance service, but also looking at the county as a whole. There were 4 options provided to us out of that study. He did give a recommendation of which one he recommends, but the 4 options are, the first one is to have a district created, so the 12 municipalities that currently receive services through us, for them to create a district and them taking over the running of the service. So they would have the district, the service would be transitioned from the county to the district, and they would take care of everything, that day-to-day, managing the ambulances, the staff, the call volume, all of that. So that was one option. The second option was creation of a district and then having a third-party provider provide the service. And so they would be in charge of that third-party provider through a contract, and then the third-party provider would be the boots on the ground providing the services in the community. The other 2 options surround a county-wide service. So county-wide service does not mean that the Richland Ambulance Service or a third-party provider would provide services throughout the county. It would mean that ambulance service would be funded outside of the levy limit by the county. So those 2 options would be for the county to continue to run the service as we have been, and then providing a stipend to the other ambulance services to help fund their service. Currently, the towns and the municipalities are funding that. That would then transition to the county doing that outside of the levy limit. The last option would be to do a county-wide and having us engaged with a third-party provider to provide it to this area. So that's the area that's currently providing services from the Richland Ambulance Association, ambulance service. So it would be those 12 municipalities. And that was what the consultant recommended would be the best option for sustainability for our service, for ambulance service in the future.
I have to admit, before this topic came up last year, I was a little bit naive. I just figured it was something that you had to do as a county, but that's not true, is
That's correct. Counties and cities are not required to provide this service. It's a requirement of the towns and the villages.
Dave, as you listen to the conversation as well, the 4 options are out there. The board, have you kind of been weighing the decisions? You haven't made a decision yet, right?
No decision has been made. At Executive and Finance, we determined we need more information to be able to make a good decision, and that key word is sustainability. We want to make sure that it's here for now and for years to come, and that when somebody calls 911, the ambulance comes. And to be clear, any of the options we're considering, there will be ambulances here. We're not talking about having to wait for one to come from Madison or La Crosse or anything like that. There will be ambulances here, however it's organized. And that's what we're trying to figure out, is what's the best way to organize it, what's the best way to fund it, And there seems to be a lot of thought that accessing that statutory exemption that the state of Wisconsin provides for us to exceed the levy limits to put that funding into ambulance service is something we should do. And people need to understand, if we do that, that's not free money. That's coming out of property taxpayers' pockets. We tax parcels of property within the county. That's how the county raises our property tax revenue. So if we fund our ambulance service, then every taxable piece of property in Richland County is going to pay towards that service. And you see various people discussing, well, it's this much per person, or we don't tax per person, we tax property. So somebody who has a $400,000 property would pay about twice as much as somebody who has a $200,000 property towards supporting the service, no matter how many people lived on that property.
Interesting. So, what happens? Do you put it before the public for a vote then, or what would you?
We haven't talked about going to a referendum. Some places have done that. There is a trend statewide. More and more counties are going to the utilization of that levy exemption to fund their services as money gets tighter across the board in all areas of county government. We look for ways. Okay, what levers can we pull, I guess, might be a way to put it. And this is one option we have available to access extra revenue to be able to pay for that service. Obviously, it's a critically important service. We would never consider not having the service, but we're at the point of making the decision, okay, if we do go county-wide with the property tax levy to fund this service, then how do we make that fair to all the surrounding ambulance services that also serve citizens of Richland County? Because we'll be taxing every piece of property in Richland County, so how do we fairly distribute that to impact all the services that are serving Richland County?
Trish?
We're in a position right now where what we're doing isn't working. The municipalities can't afford it. The county can't afford it. This isn't about us being unhappy with the Richland ambulance service. We have great staff, a great thing going related to that right now. We just can't afford to continue as it is. So we do have to look at other options. And this is a trend that's happening across the state and the nation. Ambulance service isn't funded as it should be everywhere. And so we do have to look at something different because what we're doing is not working.
Have you been getting some feedback from the public? I mean, what way are people leaning, Dave?
We've been getting a lot of feedback from the public. Some of it is there's fear. There's afraid they're not going to have an ambulance there when they need that, and that's very understandable. But it's the feedback we're getting is across the board in some cases. Those who are currently served by Richland EMS, really want to know that that service is going to continue and that they will be there when they are needed, and that's what we want too. For folks in outlying parts of the county, they're a little bit concerned that, you're going to reach into my pocket and take some tax dollars. What am I going to see as a benefit from that? So that's something we need to be very aware of and make sure that if that's the route we go, that we are doing it fairly.
Is there a deadline right now in terms of with the current contract?
Our current contract ends at the end of this year.
Yeah.
So we need to be figuring out in fairly short order what we are going to do in fairness to all the municipalities that are involved, because they need to plan for 2027. The county needs to plan for 2027. The last round of contracts, we went down to the wire, and that wasn't comfortable for anybody. So we need to make sure we're farther ahead of the game this time around.
Prioritizing your topics right now, because you got a lot of things going, but ambulance is kind of be getting near the top. I think,
yeah,
isn't it?
It's a very high priority item. Maybe it isn't the biggest chunk of our budget, but boy, it certainly impacts people's lives directly.
Yeah, it does. Steve Williamson is here. Steve, do you want to comment on it?
Yes, I would be one of them people. I have been on the fire department in Blue River for 35 years, served by Blue River EMS in the town of Eagle. So it's always a good example. It's like, well, I'll be double taxed. So we have to figure out how we're going to reimburse. And Muscadet ambulance comes, there are several that come from outlying counties across into Richland County. So it's going to be done as easy as we can, but it's going to, and I believe we have other examples that we can go off of throughout the state that are kind of in the same situation, because most ambulance districts don't end at the river or county line. So
right. So when you call an ambulance at your place, it could come from what, 3 or 4 different locations?
Yeah, it's usually out of Blue River, but I'm right on my line fence is the end of the Blue River district, and Muscadet district is on the other side of the line fence. So early on in 911 days, I remember some house fires we had that actually were dispatched out of Dodgeville. depends on how good a cell phone coverage and where it went. But now we're doing better. I don't know if that's on our agenda to talk about our towers today, but it's one of the other items. We have the new system in place here in Richland County, so that has improved a lot of our calls in response times.
Right. But as Dave and Trish mentioned, you even had somebody mention that to you this morning, that you're not canceling the ambulance.
No, in my recollection, we've never said that we would never have an ambulance here. We just got to figure out a way to make it sustainable in the future. The number of EMTs and or volunteer firemen is, our numbers are starting to fall off. Our total numbers, just like school districts, we don't have the young people in the area. And people like me that have been on 35 years, not going to be here forever. So.
Legislators and I have been working on some incentives to, get training and those kind of things for EMTs. That hopefully will help.
Yes, I know we're using some of that over at Southwest Tech. We got a fairly good sizable grant to help with the EMT training. So,
what's the latest on the roads?
Muscadet to Gotham is supposed to be this year. They're starting to acquire properties. I just messaged Josh Elder. I didn't hear back for sure if they're actually going to break any ground this year, but it's a 3-phase plan. If you have an opportunity, come to some of the meetings that they'll have for public input. But I know one of the gentlemen I work with is in the first phase on the west end of Highway 60, and they have started in the Orion area. They are starting to acquire properties, staking out the areas that they need to work within the working area right away. They usually have 2 sets of stakes along the roads. One will be actually areas that they would acquire. The other one would be area that they would ask to be able to use until the project is done.
Yeah, I noticed the other night when I was coming back from the ball game, there was a trailer there. They were getting ready to put up a sign.
Yep. So. And there was some flagging and barrels, orange barrels everywhere in the county.
Yeah, they're growing everywhere, aren't they? So, and they did lift the weight ban as well.
Yes, the road bans have been lifted throughout the county. So, and I did see some manure trucks on the highway yesterday.
Okay. Dave, the other thing we touched on a little bit, but the Simons complex and the redevelopment, what's the latest you can tell us about that?
Well, for Simons, we had some recommendations from a study. We looked at those, and we're at a point of we need to sit down with the city, who's our other operating partner in Simons. It's a 50-50 partnership with the city and the county, and talk with them and say, okay, what do we want to do moving forward? Some of the options that came out of that involved, looking for a private foundation partner or an independent nonprofit that might either step in partnership or take it over. There hasn't necessarily been anybody jumping up and down saying me to do that, but is that an area we want to pursue, or do we want to look at if the school district isn't interested in running it, would they want to come on board as a partner? Those are some options we need to look at moving forward so we can, again, come back to that word, sustainability. We want to make sure that it continues to operate. There's some maintenance work that needs to be done that the county's committing to getting done this year. And then they have ideas about how they need to grow. Simons has talked for years about their locker rooms and wanting to have family locker room spaces, which they don't currently have, and how could they make that happen. So there's fundraising going on, talking about some plans that they might be able to accomplish that, looking for grant opportunities. So again, Simons is something we definitely want to see continue, but it's a matter of how best is it organized and how best is it funded. And
you mentioned that, but the county stepped up. That was a big commitment, the HVAC system, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be several $100,000, and it needs to be done. I mean, you got to have air moving to maintain the quality of the building and people's health and safety. So it is a very necessary thing. The facility itself is at an age where it's time to start replacing some major stuff, and so this is something that has to be done.
And I think that was the school boards, that was their concern, was down the road and fixing stuff and things like that.
Yeah, and with any facility you have like that, as it ages, you're going to see needs pop up. And if you don't plan for those needs, you leave yourself in a very bad position. It was a wonderful gift that the community was given that Simons came into existence. But now, X amount of years later, well, we still have to operate it, pay for it, maintain it. So
yeah. And it's unique to Richland County. I mean, I don't know that other counties have something like this.
There are other facilities, but they're not organized like this. There are some different facilities, and they've visited several locations to see how similar operations are run. Some of them are fully funded by private foundations that have multi-million-dollar endowments and can keep things going. Some of them are operated by communities and school districts. And so there is no one seemingly best model. Depending on where you are and what resources you have available, it looks different. So that would be our challenge, is finding the model that works here.
Trish, anything new that came to light since the last time we were here talking about Simons?
There really isn't, other than Executive and Finance directed me to go back to the city and sit down and start talking with them. And I know those conversations will include Mike from Simons, will include the school district, will include the foundation. I think all of us have that same end goal of what do we do to make this sustainable. We also have to worry about, the less amount of impact we can have on the taxpayers, the better off we are. And so that is one of the things that we think about and talk about when we are looking at the future.
All right. Election Day coming up next week on the 7th of April, and the mayor's race in the city of Richland Center as well. So.
Yeah. So we have a lot of open spots on our county board. There are 5 spots where there is not a candidate on the ballot. So if anyone is interested, they can write themselves in for a spot to be on the county board.
Your chance to
make a difference for the community.
Yeah, exactly. Just bring your family in and vote for you, and you're ready to go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's and that's really, in all seriousness, very important. We need to get people out of the bushes to get in there and do what they need to do, right?
Yes, we do. There's a lot of important decisions that need to be made. The county's in a position where we don't have extra money to do everything we want to do. And so it really is looking at what are those priorities, what are those things that we're required to do, that statute requires us to do, versus sometimes those warm fuzzies, and how do we find that good balance.
And do you have to live in a certain area to be a part of that?
Yeah, then? So the spots that no one is running are District 7, 10, 19, 20, and 21. So that covers town of Aiken, town of Buena Vista, Lone Rock, and then a southern portion of the city. And if you go to our website, you'll be able to see that map and see if you fall under one of those districts.
And what happens if no one steps forward?
If no one steps forward, typically what we do is we run an ad in the newspaper, and then we try to do some recruitment if we can. It's really about word of mouth and seeing if we can get people to step up and be a part of the board.
Rod Perry, we were in a meeting one day when Rod Perry, I said, Rod, how would you like to fill in? And sure enough, he accepted. So that was good. And I believe he is going to run at least this year, for a 2-year more term. So we appreciated Rod. We were sitting across and I said, Rod, how about you? And sure.
Just got to ask.
So it's a matter of finding. And
he brings some experience back, too.
Oh, yes. Between both living here as long as he has and his experience within the city. So he's always got some information that he shares with us when we're in executive meetings, mainly, that is stuff that we would have never even knew of. So,
how long have you been a board member?
2016, I believe.
Okay.
So was that 10 years?
Yeah, sounds right. And why did you do it initially? Why do you do it? I
left the township level at the time. James Lewis was still alive. He'd been on for a long time, and I thought, you know what? I think I can do more impact. If I'm going to spend the rest of my life here in the county, I'm going to get more involved. So that's what I did 10 years ago. Well, we encourage people to step up.
Yeah. Right? And it is possible to go on that write-in route. That's how I got on the board. I've been on the board now 14 years, started as a write-in candidate when nobody was running in my district. And I got a call from somebody I knew, said, "Hey, Dave, I wrote you in." I said, "Okay," so I wrote myself in too. I got 2 votes.
And you made it.
And I made it. I always say I got elected by a 2-to-1 margin because I got 2 votes and somebody else got 1, so I won by a 2-to-1 margin, yeah.
And you made it to be chair as well eventually.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah, good. We'll talk more about Richland County and related topics coming up after the timeout here on The Morning Show. Welcome back to the Morning Show studios in WRCO. Dave Turk, Tricia Clements, Steve Williamson in to talk a little bit about what's going on in Richland County, and there certainly is plenty of things going on. We mentioned the openings, Trish. There is one contested race, though, too, isn't there?
There is. In District 14, we have a contested race. It is Darlene Tagliapietra and Michael Windle are running against each other for that spot.
Okay, so good. Thanks to both of them for stepping up, for sure. And April 7th is Election Day. Well, we touched on it a little bit. I think Steve mentioned it, but the radio tower project. Dave, can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, this is something we needed to do for quite a while. Our radio system was outdated. We were running literally on our dispatch center on hand-me-down equipment from another county. And so not just for the dispatch center, but for the tower system throughout the county to adequately communicate with emergency responders. We were in some places, there was no signal. It was bad. And so we needed to make big improvements and not just fill in the coverage, but also upgrade the system to today's standards. So it's a digital system now, and we're getting very close to completion of that project.
Yeah, April 1st, we signed the conditional acceptance of the system, so it is now ours. We will do the final acceptance of the system in August. We really wait for high foliage, and then they run testing to ensure it continues to work at that high level that we need it to. But we're very excited. The deputies have said the signals are much better. We're very excited.
That's
It's been
good.
a long haul.
Yeah, I was going to say, so they're seeing a noticeable difference then. In other
Yeah,
words.
and we built some new towers to deliver signal to places it wasn't getting. We had problems, and obviously the topography of Richland County is beautiful till you try to get a radio signal to span out. So we had to build some new towers to get signal in places that weren't getting adequate levels of signal. I would say it's still not perfect. You'd have to build a whole lot more towers to make it perfect, but for the money we spent, $8 million, we're getting a much more reliable system and a much more consistent system, working now with the emergency responders in the area to get their radios programmed to work on the new system. And I had no idea that leaves made such a difference, but Trish is right. They've got to wait till full leaf-on conditions to do their final testing.
Can I get into Blue River then, Steve?
Yeah, there's actually a tower. We didn't use it. We've utilized it in the past. They call it the Eagle Tower, but it's actually straight south of Muscatine on the ridge. So that helps a lot in the valley there. We put a tower down near the county line with Crawford, up right off of County W. We have one there. There's one on the east side of Viola, right off of 56. I've been to the one up near, on the north side, near Yuba, I believe. I can't remember what road it was on, but then we have, what do we have, a total of nine towers. So I rattled off a few of them, but yeah, it has improved our responses. We still have issues going the other direction into Grant County, but that's a different story.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about a lot of topics here, Dave, but priority-wise, how do you organize? What's the top priority for Richland County right now?
Well, that's the process we're going through right now as a county board. We mentioned ambulance service earlier. That's a very high priority item because we have a contract ending this year, so we've got to have something in place for 2027. We have been going through, we organized an ad hoc committee for facilities planning to assess county buildings and facilities and what our needs are. And we've been meeting pretty regularly, a couple times a month since the first of the year. And we're getting down towards the end of that process and starting to take the substantial list of what we came up with for needs and trying to prioritize that. Determining, okay, what things do we need to do right now? And there are some things we need to do right now. What things are then a higher priority that need to be part of our shorter term and more immediate planning processes? And then what are the things we just need to be aware of for the long term? The county has a lot of facilities, and many of those facilities are not new. We talked about some of the things going on with Simons. We built Pine Valley brand new, but now it's been 10 years ago, and as a building ages in 10 years, it starts to have some needs, and our maintenance staff is doing wonderful things out there to, make sure things are taken care of, but there are issues you need to look at with a roof, with,
Water heaters.
Things like that after 10 years, you got to deal with. We obviously have a historic courthouse building, and historic buildings are great, but if you have to live and work in them every day, there are things you have to figure out how to deal with. Historic is wonderful, but not so much in like the wiring department. That's just an example.
And computers. And,
yeah. If you try to run data cabling through a 1.5 foot thick brick wall, that's more challenging than if you've got drywall and studs, right? So it's trying to figure out how do we balance, utilizing effectively the space we have versus what we need. And I think broadly we've determined that it's not that we have a lack of space, but we have a lot of space that's not organized well.
That's exactly right. We have offices with huge lobbies that we don't need anymore. We don't have tons of people coming in because people can pay their taxes online. People can do a lot of things online and don't need to actually make a visit to the courthouse. We still need to be there. We will always be there. But we just need to look at setting things up in a different way. We also need to really focus on increasing security of the courthouse. We have a very old courthouse. There's lots of ins and outs, and we need to really take a look at how do we secure it for the public when they're there and for our employees. The other thing that we're really trying to do with this County Facilities Committee is we want to become more proactive versus reactive. We get to the point where we are forced to fix things, and then that presents other challenges, and we want to get away from that, and we want to be able to fix things before it becomes a crisis.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like being a homeowner. Sometimes you just kind of put a Band-Aid on it, and it's not a fix for forever. Right?
Yes.
But is there ever talk about a new facility, new jail, and things like that?
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that. Early on in the process, we looked at, what would it take to build like a new county government complex? Where could we, get enough land that we could put all the offices together in one building? We can't borrow that much money. It would be north of, $90-some million, probably into $100 million, given the way costs keep going up and up. And that exceeds our whole county's borrowing capacity, so that's not an option. We are in a situation where our jail in particular is deficient in many ways. We are grandfathered in on some standards because it's been in existence for that amount of time. We do have to pass state inspections every year. They make a list for us of what those deficiencies are. And thus far, we've continued to be grandfathered in, but they're looking at us saying, what's your plan? And so we are feeling the pressure that, that is something we're going to need to make a plan for here pretty soon. It's not that we're going to build a jail tomorrow, but we need to be having some conversations.
And I know one of the questions that repeatedly comes up is, can't you just remodel the jail? But the problem is once you start to remodel, every single thing that's not up to code now has to become up to code. And so it really would be more cost effective for us to build a new jail versus just remodeling. The other thing with our jail is we just don't have enough space for our inmates. There's a classification system that they have to follow. So even though there might be open beds in the jail at any given day, it all depends on where in the jail they are, because we do have to separate the inmates based on their crimes that they've committed to ensure safety within the jail.
And concerning the courthouse, I think some of those things came to light when they had the state Supreme Court traveled through and had court here as well. They
did, and we also had somebody from the state come and just give a tour of our facility and really gave us a document that outlined what do we need to do to ensure safety. There are standards out there that the Supreme Court has put in place for the judge, for the courtroom. Those are things that we also have to prioritize.
They recently had the mayoral forum, and one of the things that came up was the relationship between the city and the county. What would you want to say on that, Dave?
It's a topic of conversation because it's a reality we live in. Everybody who lives in the city lives in the county, and I live in the city, so I'm a city resident as well as a county resident, and so we have a city full of people in common as far as our constituents. We need to be able to work together, to communicate together, figure out those places where it makes sense for us to cooperate and share. And obviously the city's budget is as tighter than ours. So, it's in both of our best interests and responsibility to our taxpayers to find those places where we can get together and make things happen in the most efficient way possible.
Mm-hmm. Trish, anything you want to say?
Yeah, there are things that we disagree on, but we're each advocating for what we have to. I've got to look what's best for the county. The city has to look what's best for them. We may disagree, but at the end of the day, we're going to continue to work together. I look at it as like rivalries between, Weston and Ithaca. They might get on the court and completely disagree, but the minute they're done, they're outside hanging out and socializing and they're civil to each other, and that's what we do here. We might disagree, but in the end of the day, we're going to continue to work together.
Right.
We've had a very good relationship with Mayor Todd Coppernall and look forward to working with whomever is elected as the next mayor of the city. So,
but it's in terms of taking over things like, okay, is there, you take over Simons, we'll take over this. I mean, are there discussions like that, or?
Obviously, Simons is something we have directly in common, so yeah, we look at those kind of things. There haven't been any formal conversations about other things, but we can look, down the road and see, okay, there's stuff we're going to have to figure out. They're talking about building a new fire station, potentially. Would it make sense to also have the ambulances based in that same building? Maybe it would. We should talk about that, so.
Steve, I think the bottom line is no one wants the ambulance to quit. Nobody wants Simons to close. You just got to find a solution, don't you?
Yes, our aging population, we need both.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that I've talked to that really use Simons, and maybe someday if I slow down, I'll be able to use Simons.
You get enough exercise where you don't
Yes,
need
I
it,
do.
really.
But the other thing, talking about the city, any place that we have duplicated services, we may be able to, go together maybe in the future as dispatch for our sheriff's department and their police department, stuff like that we will look at. But right now, as we're prioritizing, I mean, the big thing is our ambulance. That is probably right now, but then in the back burners, we've got the jail and all this maintenance. I I remember when I got on 10 years ago, and it's like, I said, do you have a fund for repairs or replacement of the elevator, at the courthouse? And, well, no. Well, sure enough, within the 10 years, we've had to spend over $100,000 on repairs on it.
Those are expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
But,
And I think right now the city and the county, I mean, there's a lot of co-op between the sheriff's department and the city police as well.
Yes. They are doing well, and like Dave said, they're looking into the new fire station, location-wise, and there are other places, you got to plan for 30 plus years or more into the future. So you're going to have living quarters. Probably eventually, we have paid EMTs, they're going to probably have paid paramedic firefighters, possibly like, the larger cities do. Sauk City, when they did a big remodel, they put in living quarters, at least sleeping quarters, and they had a lot of donations towards they have a very nice kitchen and stuff like that. So it's out there, it's been done, but we're just looking into it as of right now.
You need some rich donors, don't you?
We're looking. I hear there's some over in Ithaca.
Is that right? Well, I don't know about that.
One priority the city and county have in common is we want to see that campus property redeveloped. And so that's, we're working right now and obviously the campus property is located within the city. And so it will be a cooperative effort to come up with the plans. There would be, a look to the city to extend infrastructure out there, and how is that going to be able to happen? So, we're at a status right now where our consultant is working on collecting ideas.
Right, so we've put out a request for interest for development for the campus property. The link to it is on our website, and we really hope we get people coming forth with a lot of great ideas for what we can do with that property. We really want to develop it and make it a sustainable area of the community.
Everything's kind of on the table at this point?
It really is. Yes, it is. Yeah, there's many different ideas that are out there, different thoughts. We want to make it very clear that we're not looking for somebody to come in and take over the whole property. People can come in and say, well, if I had this little corner, this is what I would like to do with that. That's what we're really looking for and hoping we get out of this process.
Unless they have a great idea and several $1 million and want to develop the whole thing. Well, cool, that's great too.
Yeah, we won't turn them away.
Right. But like housing development, Dave, that's certainly been talked about.
Housing is a conversation frequently in this area and in the city, and certainly there would be multiple different ways it could be approached on that property if you get the right developers lined up. And there's enough room out there you could do it in several different ways, even on the same property. The city had their idea about developing some single-family homes on a portion of it. That may work out great. There might be opportunities for multifamily development or a mix of residential and commercial development. All kinds of possibilities depending on what kind of interest they can find from developers who'd want to come in and do it. But I think housing is definitely high on the list of what people are looking for.
Have you received some inquiries about, from businesses outside the area and that kind of thing?
Nothing formal.
Correct. Nothing formal. I know SEH, who is our consultant that we're working with, has been having lots of conversations with different entities, and they're the ones gathering everything. So they've been reaching out and taking the phone calls and talking with people about what could come out there.
And they're connected nationwide, so it's not just local or regional people. Not that those folks are excluded, because they're certainly more than welcome to be a participant in it, but they have a very broad reach, so they can leverage ideas and capital investment from a pretty broad base.
One of the buildings that I'd like to see stay is the Copper Top Theater, and I know that's been talked about lately as well.
It is, and that's a part of the request for interest. Is the Copper Top in and of itself? Are there people interested in that and having ideas for renovating that and turning that into something that stays long term for the community? It might be hard to find somebody who has the deep pockets to be able to do those investments, but we wouldn't turn them away if there was something that came forth with that.
Have a couple of buildings been leveled yet, or is that in the works?
It's in the works.
Okay.
We are also working with a consultant to ensure that we're compliant with asbestos removal, environmental factors, all of those things that we have to look at. But it is in the works right now. The step they're at right now is working on drafting the RFPs for someone to come in and do the demolition.
Yeah.
And so the library, the classroom building, as they call it, and the science building are such that even our consultants have said, the value is in the land underneath them. It's not in the buildings themselves. It would cost so much to reconfigure them, update them, bring them up to today's standards, and make them usable for a different purpose, that it's cheaper to start with level ground and build new.
You were once a student there, Dave.
Yes, I was.
And here we are, at this stage. I mean, it's really tough decisions. It's kind of bittersweet, especially when it's near and dear to all of us.
Very much so. When we were going through stuff in the library, we had several different libraries come in and go through the campus library and get some books out. And I found the archive of the Express, the campus newspaper, which I worked on when I was there, and actually found a couple of the articles that I had written. So it was a trip down memory lane.
Well, I'll bet it was. So those talks continue then in terms of the reconfiguration and all of that then?
Yes, absolutely. Our next meeting is on April 29th, and at that meeting we will begin to review the requests for interest that were received.
Great. Anything else you guys want to add today? We've covered a lot of ground.
We have covered a lot of ground, but that's what's going on with the county right now. We have a lot of, a lot of irons in the fire. Yes. I guess you could use that expression, and a lot of decisions to make in the future. And so, for those who will be on the county board this next term, over the next 2 years, there are a lot of things we have to make decisions on to set the county up to be in a good place for the future. Historically, our budget process has been kind of reactive. We've been focused on getting through a year and getting to the next year. Our 2027 budget is going to be really challenging. We'll see what it looks like when we get done. It'll be about establishing what those priorities are and how we can best meet them, utilizing whatever flexibility we can find. We have done short-term borrowing every year for the last several years. We're going to have to continue doing that to fund some capital upgrades, some of those things on the list that are right now things we got to get fixed. But for the folks coming to the table to be sitting around the table and be members of the board, there are going to be a lot of conversations, a lot of learning for us to do as board members, and then some big decisions we'll have to make.
If it does get to the point where you decide to go to the taxpayers about the ambulance, helping to fund that would have to be sometime later this year then, wouldn't it? Before the end of 26?
Yeah, and we get input from people all along the way, and folks aren't shy about sharing their opinion, and that's good. We need to hear from people. We appreciate that. And so as we continue to gather information, sometime in the next few months, we're going to have to make a decision about at least 2027. What does that look like?
Yeah. So. And we've been having meetings with the 12 municipalities that are served by Richland Ambulance Service. Now it's time to meet with those other 10 municipalities and start talking about, how does their ambulance service work for them? What are their needs? And starting to gather their input.
Steve, anything else you wanted to add this morning that we didn't ask?
Other than the fact that, we're talking about the campus, and I sit on the Tri-County Airport down there at Lone Rock with the people from Sauk County, and they've got their campus. Their proposal is a build, and don't hold me to the numbers, but they still have 200 acres out where their nursing home farm was right off of 136 there, but they're looking at possibly building a educational center there, but they're trying to also figure out, well, why can't we use our current campus buildings? But same story, I think, is what they're in the process of probably evaluating whether they can make those work or go ahead and build new. So that's what we found that out from them at the last meeting, I think was 2 weeks ago. So, and as far as the airport, they're doing a plane study on how much activity they have, and we're doing a 10-year plan for the whole airport. So, looking for changes that may possibly come there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not by there very much, so I don't know what kind of traffic they have at their airport. From Cardinal Glass, they built, if you drive by there enough and see the biggest hangar there, they built a brand new hangar several years ago. So it's massive. It will hold their 3 jets. It does get used then.
Yes.
So, yeah. And the state, offered what, $2 million for the campus initially. Has that money been utilized, Dave?
We are still in the very final stages of getting that money moving. We're approved. They looked at our plan and said, yes, that works. And so we had to build the new bridge out at the campus. That'll be part of that funding. About $600 and some odd thousand worth of that funding will go towards the bridge that we had to replace. We'll be using some of that money for the demolition costs of buildings. And there are other things that we need to do.
HVAC of Simons,
some electrical work to separate electrical services from the buildings that the school district will be acquiring from us, from the other buildings that we're going to be either dismantling or just separating. So we have plenty of places for that money to go. It hasn't landed in our account yet, but we're getting really close.
Okay. Keep us posted. Appreciate you guys coming in. I know it's a busy time, but your transparency, I think, is really good for the public. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You bet. Dave Turk joining us, County Board Chair, along with Tricia Clements, Richland County Administrator, and Steve Williamson here. We're representing the Richland County Board on WRCO's Morning Show.